say that it's an honor and a pleasure to be here with every one of you. It's always a pleasure to see the bright faces and the light shining and reflecting back and coming from everyone. Whatever light we have is always reflecting from the great masters and God. And all credit goes to our great masters. I was initiated by Sant Darshan Singh Ji Maharaj August 29th, 1975. I was 19 years old and went to India. And when I got there was no initiation. Sant Kirpal Singh Ji Maharaj had left the body a year prior. And while I was in India, we heard this wonderful announcement that Sant Darshan Singh Ji was going to start initiating. And there were 22 people in that very first group, and I was in that first group. And what a joy that was, and from that time on, I've been with the great masters of Sant Mat, and following the teachings. Now with the living master, Sant Rajendra Singh Ji Maharaj. It is hard to believe for me that I was here 10 years ago this coming February, that I was stayed at Arlene and Tom's house for a night or two, I can't remember, and then I stayed with another friend. And it just shows you how time flies. We are getting older all the time, and some of us are getting younger all the time. It's a coin. You flip, whatever comes up is what happens. So, what I would like to do, if I may, I don't get often time to do this. I just wanted to share a little bit of poetry. These are basically verses of other poets of mine. Love took hold of me and all my walls fell down. I was left naked under the canopy of heaven and nothing else matters. There is not a moment in time when God is not calling your name. Just be still and listen. Be the flower that gives its fragrance even to the hand that crushes it. The underlying paradox of selfless service lies in the fact that while wanting no reward, selfless service elicits the highest reward, and that is the pleasure of the Lord. Many say that life entered the human body by the help of music. The truth is that life itself is music. So, those were just a few of the mystic poet verses. I'm basically here tonight to share with you about the 12 steps to spirituality. Now, this is going to mean perhaps something a little different for each of you, but I would just ask, how many of you are familiar with the 12-step program? Okay. That is basically what I want to talk about and how it correlates with the science of spirituality. Because the truth is, the two programs go hand in hand. This is what Sant Rajendra Singh shared with me back in the, I would say, mid-late 90s. And so maybe during the course of the sharing, and which I hope does generate some questions, so we can have some Q&A. I hope that this goes over enough with you because it's going to be brief. I won't spend a lot of time with it, but I just want to give a brief understanding of how this works. Number one, the 12-step movement, according to some research, is now helping some 80 million people just in the United States alone. So it's a spiritual program, just like SOSMN, just like the science of spirituality. And the bottom line is on the 12-step movement, what it's basically doing is helping our character. Coming here tonight, I was having a brief discussion, and I was sharing with the people that I came in with that our character is something that is infinite, that is finite, and it changes. And our spiritual being is infinite, and it doesn't change. So our character is something that can be worked on. The soul doesn't need any work. The soul is all bliss, all consciousness, all love. And so there's really not anything we can give it. We can't add to it, and we really can't take anything away from it. But our character is our human side, and that can be worked on. There's always room for improvement, always room for us to become better people. One of my mottos is, tomorrow, I'm always want to become a better person than I am today. And so, one of the things we want to understand in this 12-step movement is that we, believe it or not, are institutions. Everybody in this room here is an institution. And we attend group institutions. Some of them might be cultural, okay? We have educational institutions, high schools, colleges, trade schools, all of those would be educational institutions. We have religious institutions, okay? And we have political institutions. Let me just take this out of here now, so I can, this gives me the freedom to move around a little bit. So, one of the things about institutions is that they're not all healthy. Would everybody agree to that? You can definitely watch television, for those of you who do, and I'm going to bring up, let's talk about the political institutions that we have, okay? What have we been observing over the last 2 years? We've been observing a lot of dysfunction, we've been observing how the ego, we've seen narcissism, we've seen how the mind plays into this, and the truth is, if it's not aligned with soul energy, or what Master Darshan used to call our solargy, okay, then it's in an unhealthy area. And so as spiritual beings, we're trying to align ourselves with health. We want to become better people. We want to try to rise above ego. We want to try to rise above mind. And so one of the things we find is that our institutions are run by unhealthy, dysfunctional people. The leadership is not healthy. The leadership is dysfunctional. So if our institutions and the leaders that run them are, then what does that say for us? Okay, so this just proves that there's a lot of work to be done. Now, earlier, Sant Rajinder Singh mentioned that there were two sides to the path, or two sides of spirituality. And the two sides that I like to look at, yes, we all need to meditate. Yes, we all need to go within and work on our spiritual evolution. We all want to rise above and go into the beyond and have these wonderful experiences that the great masters talk about, that the mystics of the West and the East have all shared with us. The people that are having near-death experiences and all the, yeah, we all want to have those experiences. But in the meantime, there's something that Master Kripal used to talk about, and that's man-making. How many of you believe that man-making is an important part of the spiritual path? We just can't go straight to meditation and say, okay, well, I'm going to meditate and all my problems will be gone. There has to be a time period spent on personal development, on becoming a better human being. And in fact, the way I look at it, that's something that I have to be working on a daily basis. Master Kripal designed a diary sheet, and we're supposed to keep that diary sheet on a daily basis, okay, and record our thoughts, words, and deeds so that we become aware of our behaviors. Swami Ramatirtha used to put a pebble in an earthen pitcher, and every time he had an unhealthy thought or a word or a deed, he would put a pebble in the pitcher. And after a very short period of time, he was shocked because the earthen pitcher was running over with these pebbles. And he's like, oh my God, I really have to take a look at myself. And so this is a very important part, because just like Master Rajendra just said, if I have a cup of sugar and my bowl is running empty, I only have a little or nothing in it, I really don't have anything to offer someone else. I can only give to you or offer to you what I have myself. So in order for me to offer you health, offer you good, offer you positive vibes, I have to be working on that within my own self. I can't change you. You know, Mahatma Gandhi said, I have to be the change that I want to see in the world. So everything that we do begins with self. What we find in the world is that we want to try to change everyone else. We're always putting the finger out there, and something's wrong with everyone out there. And it's like saying, nothing's wrong with me. You are the problem. You're the one that needs to be fixed. And no one wants to take that finger and bring it back in this direction. So the 12-step program, as I understand it, because up until recently, for many, many years, I would say since the 90s, I had been attending one of these programs, the one that's called CODA. And we've already covered that it's an institution, that it's a spiritual program, but most of you are aware that there's 12 steps involved in that program. And I just want to briefly go over those 12 steps with everyone. Now, before I do that, you're aware that there's a book called The Big Book that is used in that program. And I just wanted to tell everybody that Bill Wilson and Dr. Bob initiated the program back in the 1930s. And Bill Wilson said that he received the steps in an experience of light, that he was actually in a meditative state, and he was experiencing light when he received these steps. And so when Swami Rajendra Singh heard that, he said, see, you know, this institution or this program comes from the light. And that's the thing that I wanted to get across, if you've not heard that before. And that would have been at the time that Hazrat Baba Sawan Singh was the master. So, you know, we all talk about being divinely inspired sometimes. And you might want to wonder that at that time that he received this program, because as I said earlier, this program has helped millions of people. But the first step in the program, it says, we admitted we were powerless over our conditioning and programming by our family and society. Now, these words have been slightly altered, but the gist of this program is the same. The first step is about realizing that we don't have any power, that we cannot manage our lives regularly, or on a regular basis, on a daily basis. Something always comes up to knock us out of kilter. And 9 times out of 10, what happens is we experience getting upset when this happens. We feel irritated. We don't feel balanced. I've heard people say I got knocked out of balance, or you know, it just wasn't functioning properly. So, you know, how can we remedy that? How can we remain stable? I've also heard people tell me that they got knocked unstable. I mean, that can happen on the way to work. If somebody cuts in front of you while you're driving, it can do that to some people. So the key is, what is it that will make this right? What can I do to help facilitate where I don't get knocked out of kilter, where I don't go unstable? What is it that I can do to help me with that? So it's very important to before we can move on, to admit that this even happens. That's the first thing that has to happen, that I have to admit to myself that I'm not in control of my life, that I'm not managing my life properly. Okay, the second step in the 12-step program is came to believe that a power greater than myself could restore me to sanity. And basically, what that's saying is that we're all on some degree or level insane. Okay, and that we're looking for stability. We're looking for how can I become a stable, sane, mature, functioning individual in the world of today. And that's not easy to do. So once I realize that I can't manage my life, now I have to realize that there is a power greater than me that can. And I have to be able to submit, or what the masters call surrender, to that higher power, surrender to that higher authority. Guru Nanak said, Lord, lead me from darkness to light, from mortality to immortality, and from the unreal to the real. So we have to realize that we live in the unreal, that we live in an insane world as far as behavior is concerned. We live in a world where the ego and the mind are in control, and those two energies have basically taken over. And the only way out of that is to have more conscious contact with ourselves at the level of soul. Okay, and that is where meditation comes in. Now, step 3 is make a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understand it. Okay, so now that I realize that there is this higher power, I have to understand that now I have to surrender my individual will over to that power. Again, this is just taking the energy of surrender to the next level. Okay? I'm giving myself over to the power of God as I understand it. And that can be your church, your mosque, your temple, your guru, your religious leaders, whatever that is for you. It's understanding that I'm surrendering to that power. Okay? I like to think of it just as the power of love. To me, the power and the energy of love and God are the same thing. The one thing that we all in this room have in common is that power of love, is consciousness. We're all conscious entities in this room in bodies, okay? And so at that level of consciousness, at that level of soul, everyone in here and outside of here is the same. We're not separated at the level of soul. We're no different at the level of soul. Soul doesn't see gender. Soul doesn't see color. Soul doesn't see whether you're small or big, or it doesn't see any of the differences that the physical eyes see. The level of soul only sees from the third eye. It sees from the inner eye. And so there are no differences as far as the soul is concerned. Now, interestingly, at step 4 in the 12-step program, it says, made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. Now, to me, this is the same thing as journaling. This would be the same thing as taking an inventory, or Master Kirpal had given us years ago the diary sheet, where we are looking for our ineffective behaviors, and we want to note those behaviors in word, in thinking, and in action. Now, most people are going to think those things in action are the most important. But my feeling about it is that my thoughts are most important, because the actions don't happen if I didn't have a thought first. Everything that we do initiated in the mind. And so the mind first had thought, and we act on our thoughts. Okay? Thoughts become feelings. Feelings help generate the actions that we perform. And so we want to get in a habit of taking inventory on a daily or regular basis of how we behave in thought, word, and deed. Even if you were not on the 12-step program, if you've never attended it, if the path of spirituality is for you and it's something that you want to follow, step 4 is very, very important, because it's addressing our character. And remember, the good thing I said about character was that what? It can change. See, the soul doesn't need any change. It's already God. It's already one with God. It's already full of love and bliss and joy. Soul's already there. Okay? And remember, soul is what you are. Okay? But guess what? We, over time, have forgotten what I just said. Over eons of time, we have so identified with this physical body as ourself, with our feelings and our emotions as who we are, that we begin to believe that. And we begin to believe it so much that we forget what we are. We have totally forgotten that. So these great saints and mystics and masters, guess what they are here for? They're here to help us remember what we are. Okay? So, step 5 of the program, I can get this out of here, is admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our ineffective behaviors. Now, I don't have a lot of time, but there's some power in not only in us realizing or recognizing these ineffective behaviors when they come about, and we can always talk to God about them. That's easy. You know why it's easy to talk to God? Because He's not physically present. Okay? And so it's easy for us to turn to a wall at night or to a chair or in an empty room and admit our ineffective behaviors. They call them character defects in the program, and that's a little harsh to me, so we change it to ineffective behavior. Your behaviors are either effective or they're ineffective. That's all there is to it. Okay? So there's a power in admitting our ineffective behavior to another person. And if you think about that for a second, where have we heard something very similar to that? Where 2 or more gather in my name, there I am in their presence. So there is a benefit and a power in being able to find a safe and healthy other, be it our spouse, companion, our good friend, whoever that may be, someone in the program, admitting our ineffective behaviors and thought worthy to another human being. Now, if we're on the path of SOSMN, or some of these other spiritual paths, we have an additional benefit. We actually have a spiritual guide, or a teacher, or a living saint, or master that we can actually go to and do that same thing. So that's an additional benefit that we have, those of us that are, say, following the spiritual path or the path of SOSMN in particular. I know many people, and I'm sure Armin and other people in here do, that have written letters of their issues with the master, Sant Rajinder Singh. I used to write letters to Sant Darshan Singh, got them back. So it's just an additional benefit. And it would be probably something like for people that are in church, you know, you have your pastors, or there's confession, there's different things where we actually talk to another human being, our reverends, our priests that we can go to and also do that with. So that is a very important step, step 5. There's a beautiful quote that Sant Kirpal left in reference to that, I think. It says, the more one purifies oneself, the more one grows into the divine light and life. So purification is necessary. How do we do it? We do it by making a record of our ineffective behaviors in thought, word, and deed. If I have a record of my behavior, then I can do something about it. If I have no record of it, I have nothing to work with. Does that make sense to everybody? So the more I'm recording these things, the more I have a ledger or a book or a journal, and I can look at that and I can say, oh, okay, I need to work on this area here. This seems to upset me a lot. I get angry or I get upset over here when this happens. The kids make me crazy, and every time I try to hold on there, just something always comes up. These things show up for us in the form of a ledger or journal. Now I can see where my work is. And so that's about step 5. Step 6 is we're entirely ready to have God remove all these ineffective behaviors. This is huge, because it's one thing to recognize that I have these issues. It's another to want them removed. And what I see in this program, those that really stick to this and follow these steps, the level of surrender as I go through the program increases. It gets deeper and deeper. And it actually begins to squeeze out the love in us. The more we can surrender, the more love is able to come out. Just picture that flower being crushed, and it gives off that sweet fragrance. So the more we put ourselves through this process, actually the more loving we become, if we're serious about working these steps and the program. So Sant Kapral Singh Ji Maharaj again says, one gradually becomes aware of his or her shortcomings and tries to weed them out. Then that takes us to step 8. So we're already at 8. Made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. One of the best examples of this for me, how many of you are familiar with Daniel Brinkley? Have you heard of him? He hasn't been doing a whole lot in the past years. He's the guy that had near-death experiences. I think a couple of them were when he was on the phone and lightning hit the phone and he got knocked out from the lightning. And just very quick, he only had 4 experiences, so this guy's gone around the world and I guess become a semi-millionaire just from having 4 near-death experiences. And if you've been following the path of Sant Mat and others, traditions like it, you will know that some of us can have those experiences on a daily basis. You know, but he only had 4 from what I can tell. But this is something that happened. When he had one of those experiences, all he could think about was after he came to consciousness from that experience, what happened when he was having the experience, he came in touch with the feelings of all of the people in his life that he had harmed. And he said that when he went into the service, he came out a bully. He was basically a bully type man. He's a big guy too. I met him, talked to him. He's about 6'4", and, over a couple 100 pounds easy. And so he was the type of guy, he said, if I had a baseball bat in my hand and you upset me, I was going to hit you with it. So he actually remembered causing pain or hurt or harm to someone, I think maybe back in the 1st grade. Some of us forget about things that far back. And do you know what he did? He got in his car and he found some of these people and he went and knocked on their door. And he would even he'd go and say, I'm sorry for what I did 30 years ago. Guess what? Some of them couldn't even remember the incident. They didn't even remember what happened. But he was at peace with himself because he went and worked on making amends with them. It didn't matter what they remembered. Okay? So that's the power of step 8, and it's a very good example of whether we have a near-death experience or not. This is something we should all think about on some level of working out. Maybe it's just with your children, maybe it's with your parents. There's these issues that have been in existence with these people all our lives, and we've never come to peace with this. You see, because we cannot make substantial spiritual progress if these chains these bonds are still there. It won't happen. We have to relinquish these chains and these bonds that we have with people. We have to find some way to make amends with our past in order to go forward into our future. So there's a lot of work there to be done. Step 9 is make direct amends to such people whenever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. That's something to think about. So we do it, but we do it in a way that it doesn't cause pain or hurt or harm to another person. That was step 9. Step 10, continue to take personal inventory whenever we are wrong and promptly admit it. That takes time. The better we get at doing this, the faster we will admit to our issues. Sometimes it takes a little while to do that. The ego just doesn't want to let go. It wants to hold on to everything and it wants to be right, so it's never going to admit that it's wrong. In fact, if you could talk directly to the ego and you wanted to tell it about God, it would tell you that I am God. That's how powerful the ego is. It's going to tell you I am God. I've seen some movies. I'm trying to think of one of them with Cuba Gooding and Robert De Niro. And Robert De Niro told Cuba Gooding when he was training him for this underwater scuba diving, A Few Good Men, he said, I am God. So that's how powerful that subtle energy of the ego can be with the mind. Let me move on to step 11. sought through prayer and meditation. This is the kicker, guys. Step 11 in this 12-step program. It says, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood Him, praying only for the knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry that out. Now, my experience has been that when people in the program read through, sought through prayer and meditation, they don't know where to go after they see the meditation part. You know, what you and I have learned is that prayer is talking to God, okay, and but meditation is listening to God. And if you haven't figured it out yet, God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth because we're supposed to listen twice as much as we talk. But over time, we got it backwards. We like to talk more. And talking is never going to afford us the ability to listen to God. If we keep talking, this never happens. And it's only in the listening that we truly get whatever the message is for us that God wants us to have. We have to be able to listen. It's even true in our practice, right? It's true in our practice. Everybody's looking for the light here. But how many people are listening to the sound? Sound is important. Did you know that the light comes from the sound? I was just sharing that with somebody tonight. Everybody thinks in terms of the physical plane, where because light travels 186,282 miles a second, and sound only travels 600 miles an hour, well, you say, light is much faster. So light was first. Well, that's what they know in quantum physics. Quantum physics is a physical science. It's not a spiritual science, okay? So the best example is when we go out into the woods and we're hunting and we want to stay out in the woods and do a little nature thing out in the woods. What do we do with those 2 sticks to get a fire? What do we do with them? We rub them together, right? Well, when you're rubbing them together, that's vibration, right? So that vibration has to happen to create the spark. So in the spiritual realms, it's the light that comes from the sound, and we have to be able to listen as much as possible to that sound for effect. Here we learn the value of rest. In this step, we learn the value of silence, and it reminds me of be still and know that I am God. That's Psalms 46:10. It's so powerful. I'm a Christian. I was raised Episcopalian by my grandmother, and I went to church when I was young every week. And if you ask me to sum up what I learned now in the Bible, I could probably give you about 3 verses. And one of them would be that. Be still and know that I'm God. Now, it didn't say be still and think. It didn't say think about it. It didn't say wonder. It said be still and know. So I thought, man, that is incredible. You're telling me that all I have to do is be still and I could actually know God. And guess what the answer is? The answer is yes. It's very true. All I have to do is practice the art of stillness. And if I do it enough and I do it long enough, I can actually get to know God. How do you get to know God? You get to know God through knowing yourself. Because in essence, if I am a drop of God, if I'm a drop of the ocean of all consciousness and all love, if I'm a drop of that, and I can get conscious contact with that power within myself, I'm killing 2 birds with 1 stone. I'm getting to know myself and God at the same time. And if I can collectively do that, then guess what happens? I begin to have an effect on the world. I begin to have an effect on people that come in touch and in contact with me. I change, my world changes. Okay? I can't force the change out in the world. I can't force anybody in this room to make any change at all. But I can work on myself. I can do what self-change, I can do self-transformation, and guess what? I have lived long enough to see it. The harder and the longer that I work on myself, the more personal development that I do on me, my world changes. In fact, I used to draw certain elements of people into my life that I don't draw anymore. And I sometimes sit and think and wonder, what's going on? Why certain people don't come around anymore? Well, they're not attracted to what you have to offer. They're no longer attracted. This is why if you go back and look at when you were in school or earlier points in your life, the people that you hung out with, the people that were attracted to you at that time, where are they now? they're not so attracted to what you are, to what you have to offer now. So as we transform and we become more conscious beings, less conscious beings are going to be pulled into your life stream. They're just not going to, you don't have anything for them, and they don't have anything for you. So you're no longer drawing that element into your life. The last and final step is having had a spiritual awakening, and that's what the 12-step program offers. By the time you get to the 11th step and you have had prayer and meditation introduced into your life stream, you have had on some level some kind of spiritual awakening. You have been transformed on some level to some degree. And when that happens, it's the same after you've had that and you have that as a result of all previous steps. It says, we tried to carry this message to others and to practice these principles in all of our affairs. So we basically just said that once I become transformed myself, now I can take that transformation out and have others experience the same thing that I am. So, you know, this is a subject that we could go on and on about. I just tried to give you a nutshell version of it. I'm willing to share more about this program with anyone. There's a lot more to it. So if you're here while I'm here over the next 3 days, you want to get an email or whatever, I'd be glad to send you more. Because I just gave you the icing on the cake tonight, just to kind of whet your appetite or your interest in it. There's no difference in this program than man-making or personal development. It's all the same thing. It's just that this is a beautifully laid out program. This has been proven since the 1930s. Why try to fix something that's not broken, right? If it's already in place, why don't I just work with the steps that are already in place? So I'm going to end that there for tonight. I've got 4 more talks while I'm here this weekend, 2 tomorrow and 2 on Sunday. I'm welcoming everyone that's here to come back as much as you can. Each is going to be very different. But it's all about personal transformation. It's all about becoming a better you. You know, what can I do to become a better me tomorrow than I am today? Remember, that's my motto, and I hope it's yours. I wanted to open the floor up now for any Q&A, any questions that anybody has on this program or anything relevant to it or anything that I share with you tonight. And we'll just try to stay focused around on this page. You sure? No, I think we should do that last. Yeah. We're going to do some meditation, but I wanted to get the Q&A out of the way first. And we're going to do just a little bit of meditation. Come on, guys. There's 50 of you in here. I know I triggered some. Let's start with you. What's your name first? Just share your name, and then we'll go from there. My
name is Angelica, and my question is, do you have to do the steps in sequence, or can you be meditating and working on the other steps at the same time?
That's a beautiful question. And everybody here, she wanted to know if the steps need to be done in sequence. Now, if I'm going to build a house and I have a blueprint to follow, what do I have to do? If the steps are there, can I do 7 and then go back to 2 and then go up and do 8? And so you can do what you want to do. My suggestion is that you work with the steps in the order that they were given. That would be my suggestion. Yes, sir. It's Chris, right?
Yep.
Okay, Chris.
Just to kind of go off with what she has, just because I've seen what the 12-step program, is that once you know the steps, just like you said, the blueprints, you have to go through the blueprints. But I've seen lots of people take steps back or backtrack. And at that point, once you know the program, once you ran the program, then yeah, you can kind of jump where you need to, because it's a lot of self-evaluation, self-changing, like you said.
Absolutely. I agree with him 100%. But I suggest that if it's new to you and you've not done it before, that you go through all 12 steps the first time at some rate of your own, on your own. And then, like Chris just said, once you're familiar with it, you might want to spend time working on step 9. And you might want to work on 9 for a whole month or more. And then you might want to go back and work on 4 for another month. That's fine. But I think you have to get the order and the nuances of the program and the etiquette, how it works down by going through it one time the way it's designed. Anybody? Yes? What's your name?
I'm Lindy.
Wendy. Hi, Wendy.
Lindy.
Lindy,
Yeah.
with an L. Got it. Sorry.
As my parents being atheists, and I'm 35 now, so I really can't blame anything or say, but the word God is really kind of a buzzword, and it's hard for me to kind of connect. And how would you give me suggestions for?
Are you saying for you or for you when you're talking to them?
Personally, but also just being brought up
Okay.
not in the church, I just wasn't around it.
So this is what I do. I use the word source. I use the word universe. I love the word love. They all, to me, mean the same thing. I don't distinguish. I could use the word light and consciousness. I just gave you 6 words that, in my personal opinion, all mean the same thing. So guess what? When I'm here talking to you guys tonight, maybe it makes no difference and I can get away with God, right? Maybe I go to a university and source is better. If I go to where there's a bunch of scientists, you know, and they want to hear source or creator, that's fine. So it depends on your audience as a speaker, and you kind of feel your way through it. But I just gave you 6 words that all mean the same thing, and feel free to use them. And if you know, because you're right, you know, God is. It's all of a sudden now we're talking about religion. You know, and as far as I was concerned tonight, I was talking about science and personal development. So you just have to, you know your audience, know who you're talking to, and get familiar with them and use terms that you can to be with them. Anybody else? Did you guys enjoy this at all? Or did you, some of you were falling asleep on? No, I'm just kidding. Yes, Arlene, how you doing, Arlene?
You talk about the situation when someone has a really difficult time to face themselves. I mean, it just seems it's hard to admit our faults.
Yes, and so you want me to say what about that?
Well, what is the situation and how do we get over it?
Oh, well, I learned something that I learned. You can take it or leave it. I don't know when I learned this in my evolution, but I learned to stop fighting things. It's a big term now is resistance. I stopped fighting the mind. I stopped fighting the ego. I thought I had to beat them up and try to win that way. So in order for me to look at myself, if it's a hard thing to do, if I'm having issues with that, then I have to bombard my brain, I have to bombard myself and my mind with positive thinking, with positive thoughts, and tell myself how great I am and how much I love myself. And you've got to do that so much that it doesn't matter what anybody else outside of you is thinking. And you may have to do that for some time, but eventually you'll win that. Eventually you begin to believe what you're telling yourself. There's no way. Look, I'm telling you, if you put up signs on your refrigerator like you do for other things, and all you're saying is, I love myself. Do it in the bathroom, I love myself. I go to bed at night and I'm writing in my journal how much I love myself. At some point, the brain has to start accepting that. And you will start to believe that. Now, as you believe that, it makes it easier for you to accept not only who, but what you are. So the other thing is to also, in my opinion, start making a connection with what you are. Remember, we kept talking about what you are? We're not just the who. The who is all of my ineffective behaviors. It's all about how I feel and how I act and how I use discharge out in the world. You know what I mean by discharge? Have you ever been in a place and you see a group of people laughing about something that you would be crying over? You see somebody get hit by a car, and there's a group of guys or people over here, and they're laughing. Well, what's happening there is that they don't know how to deal with what they just saw. They don't know how to handle the experience of seeing someone get hit by that car, so the only thing they can do is discharge by laughing. Okay? So I would see this all the time in the movies. I would go to movies, and I'm sitting there watching a certain scene, and I'm thinking, man, that's pretty sad. And all of a sudden, these guys break out in laughter. Or the reverse can happen. And so that's called discharge, when you can only act on a situation, from the level of where you're at. So that's just a little bit of how I would go about that. Did that answer any at all?
Yeah, it does.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Yes.
Maybe it's it's not like relevant to this, but I was just wondering, how do you draw a line between an ego and self-respect?
To me, there is healthy ego and there is unhealthy ego. And so if the ego that is healthy is going to have self-respect. In other words, that ego is going to support nothing but positive things in your life. It's going to help you become better. If I have to feel a certain degree of being proud of my work, proud of my wife or my kids, that's all good stuff. You know, now it can get out of hand, and that's where surveying and monitoring my thinking and my behavior and my attitude comes in. But the narcissistic behavior, the unhealthy ego is going to do nothing but separate and take all of the unity away. It's going to just all be divisive and just corruptive. And I mean, there's a lot of situations in our world right now where we're seeing this being played out. You see a young boy actually in a man's body over in North Korea actually acting out this very unhealthy ego. And there's somebody else, we got one too. But, you know, I don't want to go